Welcome to Processing Severance, an after-show podcast brought to you by the Hollywood Critics Association. I'm your host, Rasha Goel, and joining me today for this after-show are my wonderful co-hosts, Hong
whoop, whoop.
and Jeff Ewing. So how are we feeling, guys? Are we excited to talk about this show or what?
You know, can you imagine if we opened this show like they opened that show and had just like somebody like sprawled out on the table? That's how excited I am.
All right,
like, that opening sequence, I was like, whoa.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that. How about you, Jeff?
I love it. I love a good high concept series, and especially one with a really good cold open. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this show to you guys. So for all of you that are watching, I do want to remind you, we are going to be talking about episodes 1 and 2 today. And this is an after show, which means that we are going to be breaking down the show. And there may be some spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show yet, you may want to come back and visit our after show because we don't want to ruin anything for you. So thanks again for joining us. A real quick synopsis about this show. It is set at Lumen Industries, where basically employees, they receive this severance program that surgically removes their memories from their workplace and their personal life. So basically, once you leave work, you have no memories of it. And once you leave your home, you have no memories of it. Quite a fascinating concept. So let me ask my co-host, starting with you, Jeff, what did you think about the show? What was your first impression?
I enjoyed, one of my first impressions was I really enjoyed the aesthetic of the show. Because once they're inside, Lumen doors, it has this really sort of brutalist punk thought experiment vibe that I find very interesting, and I think it models, it reflects the modelization of what they're trying to explore conceptually, and I find that very exciting.
And how about you, Rick?
You know, it's like I was saying earlier, it's like just like that opening shot, and don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by like that thumbnail because you see a very depressing looking Adam Scott in that thumbnail when you're on the Apple TV Plus and you're like, do I want to click on that or not? And so I actually stayed off of it for a while, but when I started watching that first scene, I was like sucked in because it's very much, where you have the character and like, character has no idea where they're going, like what's going on, like it's like that's intriguing already, just to trap you as a viewer to say, I want to keep watching, I don't want to switch the channel.
Yeah, well, and talking about the stars, let me just mention real quick, Adam Scott stars in this with Patricia Arquette, Britt Lower, a full star-studded cast. Let's talk about this first opening scene because I feel that it definitely leaves an impression for any viewer that's watching it. So you see Britt, who's just kind of sprawled on this conference table in this very dry-looking conference room, and then she hears like the voice of God almost, and you're just like, what is going on? Trying to decipher what's happening to her character, Helly, right?
Yep. Well, what I like too is like the name of the episode is Good News About Hell. And then she's Helly. And of course, that would be a hellish situation to be woken up in a room and have no idea what's going on, where you're at or anything, and the door's closed.
You can't even get out. You can't even open the door. It's locked.
Because I think that even basic human instinct is, okay, number one, it's like, where am I? And then it's like, okay, well, let me go find something. So, when the door's like locked, then all of a sudden you're like, now I'm trapped. It's like being in an elevator that, just kaputzes out.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Jeff, what stood out for you in this scene?
Well, I thought it was interesting because you're right, it's a very hellish situation and environment, but it also looks, not that dissimilar from this space. In the sense that it could,
I'm glad we weren't found on this table.
Absolutely
like
not. Absolutely not. Because it's so interesting because it's the type of room where you're going to find it in any sort of corporate complex in America that is transformed for very mysterious, nefarious purposes. So I was very curious what was actually going on and obviously very worried for Helly.
Yeah, me too. And I'm glad you brought up that word corporate because definitely this show revolves around the corporate culture, right? And our programming and the way we just constantly live these monotonous life going to these companies and giving basically our life to these companies. What does it mean at the end of it all? So I was also taken, guys, by the colors and the aesthetics like we were talking about earlier. Just you see a lot of white. You've got that green carpet. Not a lot of color usage, even within what the characters are all wearing too, right? Just very dull. So it's interesting how that all kind of plays into the show, the theme, and the characters. And in this show, Rick, tell us what's happening in episode 1, because I feel like it's kind of an intro to the characters, right?
Right. We're like, well, we're put in this situation, and then you need to follow somebody. There's always like in a show you need a protagonist or kind of, and so what I kind of like look at this first episode is that Adam Scott, the Mark character, is a little bit like Dorothy in Oz, you know, so like that's a person you want to at least follow. That's a person you want to hopefully root for, you know, to like keep you, you know, in the game of the show. Otherwise, if you don't have anybody to root for, then you're going to change the channel. And this, you definitely want to root for him, and you want to see what is this guy's journey. And so like that's kind of the first episode is, you know, just kind of following him around, seeing what he's about and the situation of Severance.
And we do learn through this that he's the manager and he's helping recruit these other employees for the Severance program. There's 3 other employees and they're bringing a new one on. We've got the supervisor played by Patricia Arquette. So I think we're learning more of the dynamics between each of these characters, right, and what they do. But we don't really get their full backstory, just a little.
Yeah, you really learn a lot as it goes along. But for the first episode, it's mostly just building mysteries. You can see that Mark is very visibly different as an outie than he is when he's inside company walls. He's the first character you actually really get that window into his outside the world, the corporate world, personal life for. So it's mostly for the first one just kind of a you know, I said it before, a cold open, where you're kind of experiencing it through his eyes as he's put in this new position. So there's a lot of unfamiliar territory.
You know, when they first mentioned those words, innie and outie, it took me a while to get that. I'm like, wait, what are they referring to? So it's like their personal life is the innie and the outie, right?
No,
and
the
am I getting it? Wait, I'm sorry, the outie. See, I'm already getting it confused.
Because you're thinking of belly buttons. We're all thinking, because like when we refer to innie and outie, we're thinking of belly buttons. Come on, let's be honest, people.
That can't be official.
Right?
Right.
It's very official. It's a corporate dystopia. Of course, outie is the official term for your at-home self.
Yes.
There's no such thing as an outie. They're all innies. Come on.
They're all innies, right. So we do learn, though, in the process that Mark, played by Adam Scott, he is actually escaping from the death of his wife, right? So it's almost he's partaken in this program because he doesn't want to deal with that. Now, I know that we were talking about one of the scenes that stood out for all 3 of us was the opening scene. But Rick, did you have a favorite moment in episode 1?
Yes, because like I feel like it's almost like me, like when Mark is going into Lumen, and it's almost like a Mr. Rogers scenario about like how he's like just changing into his work clothes, and then when he leaves, he's like changing into his like, you know, hey, you know, it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood, you know, like putting the shoes on and the sweaters. Like I was just like, hey, that's me. That's me.
Is
but
it
this
really?
guy's going to a little bit when I come home. Yeah, it's like I've got my you know like scenario of like if I was going into a corporate culture or whatever. But that's the way I felt. Like that's like when I was watching this, I was like, oh, this is like Mr. Rogers. It's like this is his kind of when he's like, you know, like when he's the outside person is like him getting into the comfortable clothes, and then him going into work is him getting into like the work clothes.
Nice. What about for you, Jeff?
I really so after our introduction to Helly in this hellish room, you know, we follow Mark for a little bit, and then it kind of travels back in time. So we watch the process of her being there from more his side, and then he goes into the room with her and is engaging with her more personally after the initial 5 questions. And I love that scene because there's so much complicated tension because he's new in this role, he's unfamiliar, and it's going very poorly. She's still frightened and he's not helping. And so he's trying to nice guy it away while she's in panic mode, and he gets that fancy Band-Aid for it. So I just love how that scene goes because it's very, very tense.
And it's almost like there was a little choreography to it, too. If you really watch it carefully, it's like this back and forth choreography. You know, the scene that kind of stood out to me was the dinner scene when he goes with his sister. And I think that scene stood out to me because I felt like we stepped out of this corporate world and we do get a slight inside look. But that conversation at dinner is just so awkward. And you could feel those tense moments. And I was just thinking, if I was there, how would I react, or what would this moment be like? And just, again, I was noticing the colors in the room and just the way it was lit. So that really popped out. Mm-hmm. That popped out for me.
Well, it's simple. One's memories are bifurcated, so when you're not at work, you have no recollection of what it is you do there. Did I get that right, Mark?
Well,
So you walk in at 9 a.m., and then suddenly it's 5.
And you're leaving.
Well, they stagger us a little.
They
So
And then,
Stagger you.
conversely, when
No.
you're at work, you can't access outside memories. So, in effect, that version of you is trapped there.
well,
I mean, not trapped,
but what?
What do you guys think is going to happen next? I mean, how are things going to unfold? What would you like to see? Jeff, I'll start with you this time.
One thing that I really want to see is I want to see a little bit more, and we can get into this when we're talking about episode 2. I want to see a bit more of Irving's backstory, because we and a lot of this is in the second episode. He's at face value from moment one, really by the book, addicted to rules, absolutely buys the corporate worship of the founder of Kier, and but he's got something going on under the surface, and I really want to see what it is.
Yeah, I'm curious too.
Yeah, it's kind of seeing the dynamic, because like I said, like in that first episode, we've got our protagonist that we're following, which is Mark, and then we've got the other people, like just like in the Wizard of Oz, you've got the Scarecrow, you've got the Tin Man, you've got the Lion. So now, right, we've got Irv, played by John Turturro, who's amazing.
Love him.
Fantastic. You know,
Isn't he captivating on screen? I just have to say that. Like, just the way he delivers his lines.
he's
There's just something about him.
It's just like when you're watching The Big Lebowski. You know, just like him as like the guy at the bowling alley.
Oh,
just,
yeah,
like that
yeah.
character that he plays. It's like, yeah, when you see John Turturro show up, if he's not playing a cop like in a New York precinct, then it's like you're gonna get some oddball character, and then you also have Zach Cherry, who is Dylan. You know, and he's another like strange guy, and he was like plays like some like awesome roles, and he was good in Crashing. He was good in the TV show Crashing. So like just to see like the dynamic of like the other characters and interaction is like what I'm like looking forward to now that we kind of have our main guy that we want to root for.
Right. I'm curious to see how their friendship develops and evolves, and really what their relationships kind of become. Because they're stuck in this office building for like 8 hours a day, and I'm curious to see how that develops. What do we think about Ben Stiller directing and being a part of this project? I mean, he directed episode 1 and 2.
I mean, I love science fiction. I love horror. I love thrillers, and I thought that he really pulled a lot of tension and a lot of unsettling, subtleties out of the story. I think he had a real mastery of just creating this setting where everything looks like a place we could walk into, but for some reason that's a little bit hard to pin, is just off in really nuanced ways.
So when we're talking about Ben Stiller and his directing, in his early career, there's something about Mary. He was like a comedy guy. Like I think he first really started his directing career like doing a spoof of being in a bowling alley and doing a spoof of like The Color of Money being Tom Cruise. His version of it. In this, I want to say it's his evolution of directing, like that first shot from the table and then switching like out from Helly's room to where Mark and Irv are sitting and like doing that scenario of showing like one area, showing the other area. Plus, if you take how Mark walks through the hallways, it's almost like a rat in a maze. Yeah. There's like those white walls. It's like there's nothing distinct, and he's just like going around corners and everything. So like I look at this as an evolution of his filmmaking. It's a little being John Malkovich meets Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a little Charlie Kaufman, a little Michel Gondry. So I really appreciate that. Like even him as a filmmaker for this, like he's evolving. Like I know how to do comedy, so I'm gonna do a little like put my own little like M. Night Shyamalan on it too. So.
Well said, Rick. Yeah, and it also made me wonder too, just the evolution of him in his personal life and in his career, and kind of bringing that to this scenario and kind of sharing his personal experience and bringing that onto his filmmaking or his creative side. So I'm interested in seeing how this evolves. But when I was watching the show, one thing that was going on in my head was, I wonder what audiences are going to make of this show. Like, how are people going to feel after watching the show? Because I feel like it's one of those shows you're either going to like it or you're not. Like, you're either going to get it or you're not. So what do you think about this? How do you think audiences are going to feel or react to it?
Hey, if you don't get it, there's something wrong with you. That's what I say. If you don't get it, there's
You're not an
something
innie.
specific. You are not. Yeah, you are not looking for this. Is what I gotta sit there and say. Like in terms of the way you watch television, this is not something that you're looking for if you don't like it, which is mind-boggling to me because this is original and this in this time of like reboots and remakes, like this is something that's so original and refreshing, and and I think like in any scenario of The Office, you all see like one of those players or something that like, I know that guy. I know this guy. Like I know which character that I am, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But.
Ooh, all right. I'm curious to hear, Rick.
I think this is. I think you're so correct. There's so much to like about it, but I also think this is a particularly good time for a series like this to land with audiences, because I mean, right now you have a lot of a labor market where a lot of workers are leaving in droves, leaving in bad jobs, for greener pastures. A lot of people have had experiences with these bad sorts of jobs, these bad sorts of corporate environments, and it really speaks to that in, like so much good sci-fi does. It takes something that is relatable and that is very prevalent and problematic in our society, and then it just makes a couple harsher lines and a more critical edge, and then presents it to us in a creative way. And so I think it touches on themes that are going to matter, that do matter to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that and say that I think it's very relevant to what people are experiencing right now, where they are thinking about what is the quality of their life. Do they want to be spending more time with family and with their loved ones, and really, or have they spent half their life dedicated to a company? And where does that leave you at the end? Are we just these robots that wake up and do these 8 to 5 monotonous jobs? So, and I think
8
a lot
to 5
or 9 to
nobody,
6 or
nobody
whatever.
works 8 to 5.
I know. I'm just
anymore.
so whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, corporate.
There's the internet. There's email. There's texting. It's like you're never
right.
free.
So you're never done, right? You're never free. Absolutely right. So I think it's a great time for people to really think about who they are, and this show presents it kind of in that awkward, comical, alternative reality thriller way, right? That makes you think. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm going to be curious to hear what our viewers think after they watch the show. We're about to wrap up on episode 1 and move into episode 2. Any closing thoughts on episode 1?
I remember when I first watched it, I was very interested in what happens next. There's so many questions that it provokes that I found fascinating, and it doesn't answer them at all up front. It's just a series of mysteries that Mark has to gradually unfold. And so I think it's a very, very strong pilot, and I say this as someone that doesn't tend to like pilots very much. It's a great first episode, and I love that there's such a unique world to explore.
I mean, and it ends in a really cool way because you see that, Patricia Arquette, the Peggy character at The Office, is also his neighbor.
So
you're like,
awkward.
wait, what?
What's going on there?
And we saw like in the parking lot, like with Helly and Mark, like they didn't know each other. So you're not supposed to know each other. All of a sudden it's like, wait, okay. So that's even more intriguing. It's just not the dynamics of the outside world and the inside world. Now it's like, oh, there's a mixture, but the boss or the person that's the head of the table at work is also your neighbor. With
kind of a different personality too.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of spooky to me for some reason. Mm-hmm. I'm like, who are you? I want to know who she is. All right, so that does it for episode 1. We're now going to move into episode 2, where I felt like there was a lot of development. We're starting to see more with the characters, their nuances, their triggers, but a lot of different mini storylines with each individual, and we're starting to understand them more. So much to talk about. Where shall we start? I mean, I know I have some of my favorite moments, but what stood out to you particularly in episode 2?
I think it's the overall, like, what happens at Lumen on a daily basis. Like, what is their work? What is their function between each person's, like, job? What's their motivation? Like, what are their tasks? And we kind of see that. Mark comes in and he has, like, this list, and it's almost like he's like a janitor.
Yeah.
It's like that's his
Mr. Roger meets janitor.
It's like, I'm not knocking janitors or anything, but just the list is just kind of just all the stuff in there. Fill up the soap.
Well, he's a manager though, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of a weird
right.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird list to have for a guy like in that position. And it's unexpected.
Yep.
It's like unexpected to have, okay, there you go. So like, but that's so like I liked that aspect of kind of saying, okay, now we'll kind of unveil what happens, you know, in this office environment with these people initially.
Well, I think one strength of the series is that, so, you know, there's relatable things to the setting, but it's also a very weird experience because none of us can truly relate to that firm cutoff they have of the separation between their work life and their home life. But we get to walk through it with basically two characters who are learning as they go, because Mark has been there but not in that role. And so he's learning a more managerial side of things. And then Helly is absolutely new as a human to the experience. And so we get to kind of have little windows into their psyche that make it, I think, richer and a little more comprehensible than if we only had one character to be our eyes.
And it's almost like we're growing with them. So as they're kind of navigating on this journey, we are learning with them and going along that process. But a lot of nuances happened in this episode. You know, we had the melon party. We had Helly definitely being triggered and kind of now I thought she kind of accepted it, but then she goes into this mode of, well, no, I don't want this. I'm done. I want to get out of here. I'm going to attempt to get out of here. And then we start seeing different things with the characters. So let's talk about the melon party and just really like how they're awarded for the different types of things that they do. I mean, it really reminds you of that corporate culture that perhaps some of us have experienced in our life.
But see, here's the thing. It doesn't start with the corporate culture. This is where it starts, people. It starts with the Girl Scouts of America.
Oh,
you get these girls that sell their boxes to, like, you know, hit their goals, and then they get, like,
I was
get
a
the melon
brownie,
bar.
okay?
Yeah,
Don't
see?
even start
See, that's
with
where
me
it
on that.
starts.
It's all
That's where it
about the
starts. And that's
Samoa
what they're
cookies.
showing. It's like, it's not just the corporate world as an adult.
For the record,
but-
folks at home, we are not besmirching the good name of
No,
the Girl Scouts
no.
or
No.
Thin Mints.
But I think they're on
Yes,
sale
we're
right
all
now
having
too.
fun
I think
here.
they're on sale right now too. But that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But it's like
I will
that.
take
It's that
10
whole.
boxes.
You know, if you set some goals, then you get like these weird things, and in every like there's certain as kids like you'll love anything. You'll love any little goal that you can hit because that's what we're supposed to like do is like set goals and achieve them. As adults, you know, it's more just like, can't you just boost up my salary? I don't care about this like melon party, this waffle party. I don't care about.
But Rick, they're excited about that. Like
Well,
you're actually
because
looking
they-
at the
right.
caricature and
Well,
you're looking at the eraser and
I mean,
all the different things
Dylan
that Dylan's
is.
talking
Well, because
about.
Dylan was intrigued. You know, he was intrigued to sit there and say like, well, if I do this, then like, what do I get? Oh, this is what I get. You know, if I do this, what do I get? So
100% is tier 5. That gets you a caricature portrait. You'll note I've accrued an embarrassment of wealth in that regard.
Wow.
Correct. Each one of these, finish file in the can.
So that's the highest award?
Percentage-wise, yes, but if we hit our numbers by quarter's end, one of us gets named Refiner of the Quarter, and that shit gets you a waffle party.
I'm sorry, a waffle party?
Okay, hazards on, Eager Lemur. I'm a deadlock for that this quarter, so don't get your hopes up.
The interesting thing is that almost every office has that person or those people who are they really buy into the corporate culture. They really love those little the melon parties, the little gimmicky caricatures and finger cuffs and erasers for some reason. And then Dylan was so miffed that Mark had a special thing. Like, that's just a thing they gave him. Like, there's such
a little weird
Well, there's
plaque
that
with his
jealousy
face.
though,
Yeah.
right? There's a little bit of
Because he
jealousy
buys
happening
it.
there. Yep. Yeah. And I thought what was so interesting in this episode too was just Irving and how particular he was about the protocols and following the manual. And I think the whole thing with that photograph that happened, you know, so we've got Mark who removes this photograph because Petey, who we're going to talk about in just a second, is in the pictures and it made him feel a little bit emotional. So he removes them. But apparently there's a protocol to removing pictures from a desk. And Irving is just really upset about it. And just that scene to me was just hilarious, the way the entire thing transferred.
Absolutely, because Irving was so wedded to things being done by the book that he actually printed out like the casual slide across the table, like, actually, just so you know. And I think it's also interesting too that Milchick found it such an infractable offense, you know, as such a small thing.
He plays by the rules.
Yeah, I mean, like Irving's like that guy. Every office has some version of like and that's the guy that you're just like, oh, dude, I can't stand that guy. And then you got Milchick, and Milchick's the kind of the version of he's a little bit like human resources. He's a little
He
bit
is human resources,
it's
I
like
think.
he's a little bit human resources where it's just like, okay, I'm going to come in and like, oh, let this slide, but this has to go and everything. And so but I'll say like I was saying earlier, I would say not the goal-oriented part, but just kind of the practicality of Dylan. I'd say I'm a little bit like Dylan at work, just like making fun of Irving, how rigid he is and everything. And then showing the new person, it's like, oh yeah, you get this, you get that, whatever. And so kind of like showing the new person kind of around the block a little bit.
So you're like Dylan.
A little bit.
Okay, now that we're talking about this, so Jeff, which character are you most like?
Oh, I'm absolutely a Helly. Totally.
You're Helly?
I'm like, no, I'm going home. This is ridiculous. I do what I want.
Can you guys guess who I would be?
Milchick, obviously.
No, you're Mark, right?
No, I'm going to say I'm Irving. Here's a manual. Follow the rules.
Every office has one.
And that's why Jeff and I always go out to drinks afterwards. And Rasha's like, oh, you guys went out to
you
drinks?
guys are doing. I always wonder why they're rushing out of here. And I always figure maybe they have another job or they got to get up early.
We got a thing?
Thanks for
We
the
say our
invite,
goodbyes
guys.
outside, and then we kind of see like, and then we wait till she gets in her car, and then we take off.
I'm going to talk to the boss about another manual for you. But okay, so, we get to see more of the office dynamics in here, right? We get to see the nuances of the characters. Let's talk about Petey. Because now Petey is a former employee who seems like he broke through the Severance program, and we're getting to see little bits and pieces of him coming back in. Obviously, Mark is triggered by him, but yet Mark is intrigued by him too, because we do see Mark going to meet him and bringing him to his house. What do you guys think is happening there?
It's curiosity, right? It's just curiosity. I mean, it's like because the thing for him was that, we saw this in episode 1 where there's conflict with him making the decision. Like people are aware of people that do this severance thing. And so you see, like, he's very pro about, I made this decision, I'm okay with it. But then you bring in this outside thing, and it's like, he's curious. He's like, wait a minute, how, like, I made this conscious decision, but there's ways to break this. Like this guy that supposedly, it's a curiosity thing. It's just, you can't, it's like the apple in the tree. You just got to, like, grab it and taste it and try it, so.
But I feel like it wasn't an easy breakage, right? Because we were seeing Petey kind of go through this process once Mark brings him to his house. And it's very disturbing to watch because you're trying to figure out what's happening in the psyche of Petey. What did you make of that? Or what do you think? I mean, any analysis on maybe how he even broke past this?
Well, I think he's in an interesting position because, he mentions that there's a sickness that he has as a side effect of whatever mysterious thing he had to do to reintegrate his brain. And there are clearly devastating after effects to that because he had a fundamentally fragmented psyche. And the interesting thing to think about is, okay, so if you enter that situation and then you're divided into the innie and the outie self, right? You start out as one person, same person, these different roles. But the longer you do it, and we don't know how long he was there at this point, your experiences change the person you become, and that would be the same for him. So if he was there, hopefully not, but 20 years, that's 20 years of entirely different lives being entirely separate people. And so that's a lot to reconcile once you're reintegrated.
Yeah, I'm interested and curious about how he kind of broke through the system because it was really interesting. There's that one scene where he's showing Mark that he's mapped out things, right, of where everything is. But then he's got those question marks in that one area because he doesn't understand what's in that area. So I'm curious to see how that unfolds and what does he know that we don't know yet.
And hence, like, what, like the directing aspect of it, like that mousetrap. Like the walls are all the same, so it's like you can get lost. It's almost like a horror movie. Like in a horror movie, like the guy chasing you and you're running down the hallway. But I mean, if you don't know if you're like if you go right, it's like a house of mirrors. So you go right or you left. You don't know if you're gonna hit a dead end. And I think that's why like he's kind of got it mapped out. But that the question marks is because like, gosh, everything was just so this way and that way. That's hard for me to determine what was what. There was no bathroom. With the circle and the triangle and the man and the woman bathroom, like just to make things distinct, like at least from what we saw.
Right. And and to add to that, you see Mark having this conversation with him, trying to figure out, right? It's raised the curiosity. But here's what I'm also thinking about too when it comes to Mark. So you've got the Petey aspect happening. What about that date that Mark went on? So now we're seeing all these different elements. He's dealing with Helly at work. He's got this Petey situation, which is creating some type of confusion. Doesn't end up going to work, making an excuse. And then he had that awkward date, which was just so random.
But I think it kind of shows, too, that, when you sit down at a date, like you sit down with a stranger, you're trying to open up. You're trying to gauge, like, this or that about you. And when we do that, our work life, are kind of, like, even like when we're at any party, like whatever, it's like, oh, what do you do? And so, like, he can't really share that with her because he doesn't really know. And then the other half of it is he going to feel judged because he made that decision? And so how does that person look at him of like, well, is this really going to go south, or like, do I say that for date 2?
Right.
Date 3,
And
if I can weasel it that way.
Absolutely. And then the world establishes that procedure is very controversial, that it's something that is judged, and he finds that out in person in front of our eyes immediately after the date. So he's dealing with the social stigma attached to something that, like you're saying, he can't even speak to because it's an experience that's cut off to him. But then also he's still dealing with grieving. So emotionally, he's in a bad spot.
Yeah, he is. He definitely is, both at work and in his personal life. But, I think what's going to be also interesting to see is his development with the neighbor. So let's talk about Patricia Arquette, where she plays the supervisor at work, and she's right, and she's kind of very Selvig, very hard. She's got this very crude personality. It seems like you just can't break past her, right? Like an ice maiden. But then you see this other side of her where she's so caring and she wants to nurture and help him. And so I don't know. The parallel there was very interesting to see the dynamics between them.
Yeah, I think it kind of because I was thinking through that a lot because I find it fascinating. And there are definitely mysteries to be explored, but I think it kind of speaks also to my curiosity about if you're there for a long period of time, you really can become entirely different human beings and your sort of divided self. And right now we can assume that she is properly severed like everyone else. Hypothetically, there might. We don't know everything about what she's going through experientially, but
I wonder if she really is.
Yeah,
I see. I don't think that she is. I think
she is.
No, because the way that I look at this whole thing is it's an experiment. The whole thing is just like I said with the mousetrap and everything. The whole thing is an experiment, and she's the one that has to see like if things are like working properly, and we also don't know because Petey broke out. We don't know at this stage. We don't know how long she's actually lived next door to him.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe she moved in right after Petey like broke out.
She wants to keep her eyes on him.
So,
Mark, right?
well, actually, never mind. I guess Petey, they had just fired Petey, so like maybe that's not the case. But I think that.
But it's interesting that she's his neighbor, like you said, because I almost wonder if it's a way of her keeping her eyes on him. I mean, come on, right now he is their token. He's their prize, right? So maybe they want to make sure that they're able to control him and make sure that this particular character does not leave the mousetrap.
And we see it. We see her like gazing across, because it's like, well, he called in sick. He called in sick. So she's like, so is he at home? Like a creepy boss would.
Right.
It's just like person called in sick. It's like, I got my boss showing up to my house and saying, hey, where are you? You're not here today. It's just like, so like that aspect of it, I got that another like really cool directing shot just to see from across from like her house to his house.
She does always have that knowing look when she's when he's in her office and she's speaking to him. She always has that appearance of, like I'm seeing through you.
I'm watching you. Very eerie. The surprise element. Burt's entrance.
Well, see, that's what's awesome.
Played by
Christopher Walken. I mean, which is terrible, like my impression, anyways. But it's cool to see like his, you see his credit in episode 1. So it's just like, oh, Christopher Walken's in this, cool. And then he, and then like you finally get to see him in the show, but he's just a random character that just,
Very.
You don't know who, it's just like, what?
Makes a special appearance, and then I'm wondering, are we going to see more of you, or were you just there for this hall moment to admire this photograph, exchange a few dialogues? What do you think? Do you think we're going to see more of him?
I feel like there's going to be a lot more Walken.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he really connected with Irving, and Irving needed someone to connect to grow as a character and have a proper arc. And I don't feel like they would have had such a memorable scene just for it to be a one and done.
All right, guys. Something that's really been on my mind is, what is Lumen Industries? I mean, I've been trying to watch and figure out, like, what do these people do? What happens at this facility? Are they like a scientific lab? What kind of a corporation is this? What do you guys think? Any guesses?
My guess, and, of course we don't have enough data, but my current running guess is that they are involved in experimentation to actually control population, something really deeply nefarious. Because they even do that with their employees on an internal level. Like, to have them do meaningless garbage, irrational labor of grouping together numbers by emotion, it doesn't even make sense other than as a conditioning exercise.
Yeah, it's kind of like this weird corporation that's there. It's almost like they're like a hidden thing. And then I was even trying to dissect the Lumen logo.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is it looks like Amway. It looks a little bit like, I just want to say if it's just got like a little Easter egg just to say here's some fun. The logo looks like Amway, and then then Mark's in there like doing all the weird cleaning stuff. So I was like, I wonder if they just kind of did this as like kind of a funny thing. So
you heard it here first, folks.
Yes.
But somewhere if you go Google it in some lexicon, Lumen, Lumon, some sort of meaning. I was trying to find it, and it says like to go along with.
Now that's very interesting, Rick Hong.
So that's a deep type thing.
That takes us to a whole nother level, dissecting the show even on a whole nother different level. Wow, that's interesting. All right, we're going to have to find out what Lumen is all about, who Mr. Egan is. But in the meantime, what do we predict is going to happen in episode 3? Because honestly, I can tell you, as I was watching episode 2 and all these different stories unravel, I was curious to think about what am I going to see next? What's going to unfold for each single one of these characters? Anyone specific that you can think about and what we might see going into episode 3?
I think it's going to go one way. We're either going to know more, like Jeff, like you said, we're either going to know more about Irv, or it's going to go the other way, and Helly's is going to keep consistent with her character being the naysayer, and she's just going to keep coming in skeptical, losing her mind or like whatever, and being like, I don't want to be here. And we're going to maybe see like more consequences of like, how do we control this person that doesn't want to be here?
Yeah, I would say I expect to see more out of Helly, because in the first episode, we right away establish that she's terrified of that place and that experience. And it starts out episode 2 reinforcing that with her every single time wanting to do anything but stay there as soon as she's in that space. She's pressing Milchick, she's pushing the rules, she doesn't care about them one bit. So I think we're going to see a continuation of her pushing things while it kind of pulls Mark along with his seemingly natural curiosities.
And I'm going to say, I think we're going to see a little bit more of Mark too, and how, I don't know, I think he's going to start questioning things. Up until now, we were seeing him that he's like this leader, and he's again just going with the flow, following the rules of what he's been taught or what he knows. But now with Petey in the scene, we're going to see a little bit more of unraveling with Petey to where he got to where he is, and maybe Mark having more interaction with him, and then starting to slowly maybe questioning, who am I and where am I and what am I doing? And I don't know how that's going to change the dynamics between him and Helly. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they might start conspiring something together. Who knows?
I mean, and let's be honest, with the way this episode kind of ends too, it's like we don't really know if Petey's alive. We don't really know, know if he actually makes it. I mean, maybe it's goodbye.
Is it an illusion?
Yeah, like too.
Could be. The thing that I also think is interesting too is that supposedly, not only is there a external Audi map of the inside of this mysterious severed floor, but also he said that he left one inside the building. So I think we're going to see that.
Great point. Yeah, I think a lot more to unfold. Well, this has been so much fun. I think, the first 2 episodes are exciting. They really set something for us to look forward to. They've set the stage. We are going to keep having these conversations, and we hope that you keep coming back. We love hearing from all of you. So make sure that you share your feedback. Hey, and if you have questions or if you want us to dissect something from the episodes, let us know. We're here to provide that for you. Once again, I'm Rasha Goel.
I'm Rick Hong.
I'm Jeff Ewing.
And you've been watching Processing Severance, presented to you by the Hollywood Critics Association. Join us next time again for our after show with more scoop on Severance.